Feel free to share your location. Now, let's delve into today's narrative. Malcolm Sharp stood in the marble entrance hall of the Vance mansion, observing his 4-year-old daughter Emma Chase chasing fireflies across the neatly trimmed lawn as the sun cast a golden glow. However, Malcolm felt anything but warmth. 3 years ago, he was a different man. A decorated Marine Corps captain with 2 tours in Afghanistan, Malcolm had established a thriving security consulting firm. He was methodical, tactical, and skilled at understanding people, much like reading books. These talents proved useful in both battlefields and corporate settings. But then he met Shelby Vance at a charity event. She was breathtaking, radiating an elegance that made other women seem garish. With blonde waves cascading perfectly, green eyes glimmering with intellect, and a smile so persuasive it could sell ice to Eskimos. Directly addressing him, an action uncharacteristic of her high social status, she engaged in hours-long conversation. Her interest in his work, life experiences, thoughts on diverse topics such as foreign policy and classic literature was evident. That evening, she admitted to him, "You're unlike the privileged individuals I typically encounter. You've accomplished something with your life." Within a year, they were married. Malcolm believed himself the happiest man. He was mistaken. The Vance family amassed their wealth in pharmaceuticals. Taylor Vance inherited Vance Industries from his father and expanded it into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Jeannie Vance, now known as Jeannie Livingston, was herself an heiress to old money. Together, they wielded influence over Connecticut's elite social circles with iron fists encased in silk gloves. From the outset, they made it clear that Malcolm wasn't worthy of their daughter. He was at best a newcomer in terms of wealth, though he had achieved success without any financial assistance whatsoever. His parents were a high school teacher and a nurse, decent individuals, yet not their type. Mother suggested they move into the East Wing, mentioned 6 months after their marriage by Shelby. She'd fully renovated it with custom amenities. Malcolm initially wished to decline, maintaining their independence in the house he'd bought before meeting her, which was modest but comfortable. However, with Shelby pregnant with Emma, he justified it as temporary until the baby arrived and they could stabilize their finances. That was nearly 4 years ago. Now, Malcolm's business no longer exists. Shelby had persuaded him to bring Taylor in as an investor, and within a year and a half, the Vances systematically dismantled his enterprise. Clients were lured away, contracts failed to materialize, key employees were wooed with offers Malcolm couldn't match. Once his company crumbled, Taylor purchased the remaining assets at a fraction of their worth. Shelby reproached Malcolm with, "Don't overreact, Malcolm," when he confronted her. She maintained that his father was merely trying to assist, and he should be thankful for avoiding complete bankruptcy. Malcolm contemplated departing at that moment. However, Emma, who was only 3 years old, was a factor. Shelby's lawyers had made it clear that if he left, he would lose all contact with his daughter forever. The Vances possessed the wealth, influence, and power to entangle him in family court. He could expect supervised visitation at best or nothing at all. Therefore, he remained. And he watched. And he learned. The Vances were not just affluent, they were corrupt. Taylor's pharmaceutical company had amassed billions by peddling opioids to suffering patients, fabricating research, and bribing doctors and politicians. Malcolm stumbled upon this information accidentally, finding documents left in the study one night. He began investigating discreetly, knowing he would need evidence if he ever wished to break free from this gilded prison. "Emma, look!" Emma's voice interrupted his musings. She displayed a firefly in her tiny hands, her face radiant with innocent delight. Malcolm walked across the lawn and knelt beside her. "Gorgeous, sweetheart. Free it now so it can reunite with its kin." Emma released the firefly, which floated off into the twilight. "Just like a wish," she murmured softly. "Absolutely, just like a wish." Malcolm hugged her, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo. She was the only pure entity in this contaminated Eden. "Malcolm!" Jean Vance's voice sliced through the lawn like a whip crack. She stood on the terrace, immaculate in a cream suit even at this late hour. Her hair was tied back severely and her face, tightened by costly surgery, bore its customary expression of disdain. Dinner is in half an hour. Try to make yourself presentable and clean up Emma. She looks like a homeless child. Malcolm felt Emma stiffen against him. 4 years old, Emma was already wary of her grandmother. "We will arrive," Malcolm responded, maintaining a neutral tone. As Jean retreated indoors, Emma looked at Malcolm. "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma like us?" Malcolm replied. "Some people just don't know how to show love, sweetheart. That's their misfortune, not ours." Yet, as he guided Emma towards the house, a tightness crept into Malcolm's jaw. He had spent 3 years amassing evidence, constructing his argument, devising an escape plan. The accumulated documents would ensure Taylor's life imprisonment. Jean was implicated in every decision, and so were Shelby. Over time, Shelby, Malcolm's wife, had revealed herself to be just like her mother, cold, entitled, and malicious. She had married Malcolm out of boredom and fascination, but once the novelty wore off, she treated him with open disdain. 3 weeks passed. A conversation overheard in the library shifted everything. Sitting there with his laptop open, studying documents, whispers filtered through from Taylor's study above via the heating vent. Malcolm paused, listened. "We need to handle the Malcolm issue." This was Taylor's voice. "I'm trying, Father." Shelby sounded annoyed, like a scolded child. "He won't consent to a divorce, for he knows he'd lose Emma then, Jeannie this time. This should have been addressed before the baby was born." "The prenuptial agreement safeguards our assets," Taylor replied. "But he's becoming a burden. He's too intelligent. He asks too many questions." "What's your plan?" Shelby inquired. After a lengthy pause, Jeannie spoke, her voice as chilling as frozen blood. "An accident. Something clean. His job was dangerous. Or it was. Security consulting often takes people to perilous locations." "My dear mother, don't be gullible," Jeannie suggested. "Have you pondered if we're confronting an unprecedented predicament here? For 4 decades, your father and I have safeguarded this family. Malcolm Sharp constitutes a conundrum. Challenges get resolved. But this time, it isn't merely about divorce. They spoke of murder. What concerns me is Emma." Shelby expressed worry in her voice. "She adores him," Jean responded nonchalantly. "She'll forget. Children are adaptable." That night, Malcolm embarked on serious planning. He rekindled old military ties, transferred funds into accounts hidden from the Van Cesses, and prepared for battle. After all, this was a struggle, wasn't it? And Malcolm Sharp had previously engaged in battles. He chose to gather one final shred of proof: evidence that Taylor's firm had manipulated clinical trials for their latest opioid, a drug causing the death of countless individuals. Malcolm had reviewed the emails, research data, and bribes to FDA officials. However, he needed the tangible documents from Taylor's safe. Tonight, Taylor offered him an ideal chance. As Malcolm assisted Emma in washing her hands in the powder room, Taylor called from his study. "A moment, if you don't mind," he said. Malcolm dismissed Emma to find her nanny and walked towards the study, acutely aware. In the study, Taylor sat behind his extensive desk, holding a glass of scotch. A large man in his 60s with thinning gray hair, a reddened complexion from excessive drinking, but his eyes were piercingly keen. "Shut the door," Taylor instructed. Malcolm obeyed, taking note of the security camera locations. Although they covered much of the room, there was an unmonitored area near the bookshelves. He had identified it months ago. "I have a suggestion for you," Taylor started. "I understand things have been challenging. You've given up a lot for our family, and I want you to know that I recognize this. Therefore, I am prepared to extend a significant opportunity to you. Let me hear your thoughts. In the upcoming week, we are going to Aspen for a family trip. It will just be the 5 of us. Me, Jeannie, Shelby, you, and Emma. Quality time away from all the chaos. During our stay, I'd like to discuss your future with the company. I am considering creating a role for you Vice President of Special Operations. The package would include salary, benefits, the whole works. All you would need to do is sign some papers." Malcolm kept his expression calm, but his thoughts were swirling. This seemed too good to be true, a trap. Get him on the private plane, seclude him in Aspen, have him sign documents that could either incriminate him or take away his parental rights. And if he refused, an accident, something discreet. That's a very generous offer, Malcolm replied cautiously. Can I ponder it over? Naturally, naturally. We depart Tuesday morning. Tomorrow, I'll have an answer for you. Taylor's smile didn't genuinely brighten his eyes. I truly hope you'll agree, Malcolm. It would be regrettable if you declined. The threat was subtly implied. Malcolm nodded and exited the study. His mind was swiftly calculating various possibilities, countermeasures to their strategies. He'd spent 3 years being underestimated by these individuals. They believed him weakened, castrated, confined. Soon they would realize how mistaken they were. That night, following Emma's sleep, Malcolm sat in the shadows of their bedroom suite and formulated his strategy. He wore a wire to dinner, recorded Taylor's proposal along with its connotations. He had already duplicated the contents of Taylor's safe using a security flaw the elder man was unaware of. He possessed proof, he had allies, and he had skills they couldn't fathom. But what he had most significantly was something they'd never grasp: a love for his daughter that surpassed wealth, status, or self-preservation. Malcolm Sharp was gearing up for battle. For the next 3 days, events unfolded in a meticulously planned sequence. Malcolm enacted his role as the dejected son-in-law, graciously accepting Taylor's proposition and expressing thanks fittingly. He packed for Aspen, assisted Emma in selecting her preferred playthings, and maintained a cheerful demeanor during family gatherings where the Vances spoke of their impending Aspen journey with barely veiled excitement. However, beneath this veneer, Malcolm was readying himself. His ex-Marine comrade, Chris Wilkinson, currently worked for the FBI's white-collar crime division. For months, Malcolm had been providing Chris with data about Vance Industries, constructing a case that would be watertight. 3 days before their departure to Aspen, he met Chris at a diner situated 40 miles from the estate. This was all the information Malcolm had shared, pushing an encrypted drive across the table to Chris. Evidence of doctored financial reports, tampered research data, correspondences with FDA representatives, bribery evidence, and proof concealing hundreds of Vance pain-related deaths. It's all on the drive Chris had kept hidden, his face somber. This material could lead to the downfall of the entire company. However, Malcolm warned, they've already attempted to kill me. He detailed a suspicious job proposal from Taylor and a planned Aspen trip. Prepare yourself. When I give this signal, federal agents should be waiting. What's your plan? I aim to provide enough evidence for them to incriminate themselves, but I need to ensure Emma's safety. Chris agreed slowly. I'll have a team on standby. But Malcolm, this is risky. If they act prematurely, I'll be prepared. Malcolm then paused before leaving. If things go awry, if I don't survive, make sure Emma understands I loved her. Ensure they pay for each life they've devastated. As dawn approached outside the Vance mansion, Malcolm stood vigil, observing their Gulfstream G650 jet being readied for takeoff. A $70 million toy, one of Taylor's many possessions. Over the past 2 days, Malcolm had scrutinized every aspect of the aircraft, from its safety mechanisms to emergency equipment. He'd even laid traps. Daddy, Emma burst from the house, her backpack swinging rhythmically. She donned her cherished purple dress and glowing sneakers. Indeed, we're boarding Grandpa's plane today, he confirmed, lifting her into his embrace. A compact suitcase for her contained a GPS tracker, a prepaid phone, and a sealed missive explaining the situation. A precaution in case his scheme collapsed. Soon after, Shelby exited the house, immaculately attired in designer travel garb. She barely cast a glance at Malcolm as she strode towards the awaiting car, bound for a private airfield. Her eyes held no warmth, no echo of their past vow to love forever. She'd made her decision. She'd chosen wealth and influence above all else. Is Mommy angry? Emma murmured quietly. Mommy is just focused on the journey, Malcolm replied, though his daughter's instinctive perception was true. At 4, Emma was already adept at sensing the emotional climate of rooms, discerning threats in the tension of adult presences. Malcolm despised that she had to learn such lessons so prematurely. The 20-minute journey to the airfield saw Taylor and Jeannie traveling separately in their own car, upholding the facade of family unity while distancing themselves from the man they intended to eliminate. Malcolm spent the drive rechecking his plan one last time. The jet would reach cruising altitude, approximately 30,000 feet, around 40 minutes into the flight. At that point, they would take action. He had come across the papers Taylor had seemingly left on purpose for Malcolm to find. These documents aimed to strip him of his parental rights, declare him mentally unfit, and grant the Vances full custody of Emma. They intended to intimidate him, trap him psychologically, and if he still resisted, an accident would occur, a clean one. However, Malcolm had his own plans. On the tarmac, Hal Ward, the pilot who had been with the Vance family for 15 years, welcomed them cordially with professionalism. Malcolm had delved into Ward's background. The pilot was loyal to the Vances and paid handsomely for his discretion. He would turn a blind eye if necessary. Inside the Gulfstream, opulence reigned: cream leather seats, polished wood paneling, a fully stocked bar, and a luxurious bedroom suite in the rear. Emma's eyes widened in amazement. "It's like a flying castle," she whispered. "Indeed, young lady." Malcolm assisted her with securing the seatbelt, subsequently settling himself opposite her. Shelby moved as far from him as possible, seemingly disinterestedly scrolling through her phone. Taylor and Jeannie sat near the front, conversing in hushed tones. The engines revved up. The aircraft began to move. Malcolm's heart rate remained constant, a skill acquired in combat. While fear was natural, panic was the foe. He needed to stay composed, alert, and prepared. They departed smoothly, ascending into the bright morning sky. Emma pressed her face against the window, observing the ground recede. "Look, Daddy, it all appears like playthings." "You're correct, dearie." Malcolm glanced at his watch. 40 minutes until they reached cruising altitude. 40 minutes until turmoil erupted. He had prepared for this. Concealed in his luggage was a miniature camera, already filming. Stitched into his jacket was another GPS tracker. Primarily, he had sent a coded message to Chris Wilkinson prior to departing the estate, signaling the commencement of a plan. 30 minutes into the flight, Taylor undid his seatbelt and headed towards where Malcolm was seated. His demeanor was friendly, yet his eyes were icy. "Why don't you accompany me to the bedroom suite?" Taylor proposed. "We can discuss those documents I mentioned, giving you ample time to study them thoroughly." It wasn't a suggestion. Malcolm glanced at Emma, engrossed in her tablet with headphones on. "How long will this take?" Taylor responded, "As long as necessary." Malcolm rose and followed Taylor towards the rear of the aircraft. As they passed Shelby, she lifted her gaze from her phone, and Malcolm noticed a fleeting emotion in her eyes, perhaps guilt, perhaps fear. It vanished before he could discern it fully. The bedroom suite was snug yet opulent. Taylor closed the door and fetched a folder from a cabinet. "Let's dispense with formalities, Malcolm. We'll get down to business. You'll be required to put your signature on these documents. All of them." Malcolm received the folder and leafed through it. The contents corresponded to his expectations papers, stripping him of parental rights, custody granted entirely to Shelby, and a confession admitting embezzlement from his own company prior to its collapse. "I won't be signing these," Malcolm stated in a measured tone. Taylor's jaw tightened noticeably. "You have no alternative. Everyone has options. Not you, not anymore." Taylor's voice turned ominous. "You'll sign those papers, Malcolm. If you don't, something unfortunate is going to happen to you. It could be as simple as trying to open a door at high altitude. It could be a fall. These types of events occur." Malcolm allowed the silence to linger. Then he offered a chilling smile that caused Taylor to take a hesitant step back. "You're threatening to kill me," Malcolm whispered, "and you believe I didn't anticipate this?" "I think you're an insect I'm about to eliminate," Taylor snarled contemptuously. "You have no place in our family. You never did. Shelby has erred, yet we are rectifying it. If you don't sign these documents promptly, there will be consequences." The door swung open. Jeannie entered, her face contorted with rage. "Let's get straight to the point. He won't sign. I knew he wouldn't. Men like him always prioritize ego over reason." Following her, Shelby emerged, accompanied by Emma. Malcolm felt a chill run through his veins upon seeing them. "Emma, return to your seat," he commanded. Jeannie replied coldly, "She needs to witness this. She needs to comprehend the repercussions for those who challenge our family." Stepping towards his daughter, Malcolm said, "You're mad." But Shelby held Emma back, preventing her from moving. "Don't," she implored, her voice trembling slightly. "Don't complicate things further, Malcolm. Just sign the documents. You can vanish. Begin anew somewhere. We'll provide you with funds. And as for Emma, she remains with me, with us, where she truly belongs." Malcolm glanced at his former spouse, now his wife only in spirit, and saw the woman she had transformed into. Perhaps she had been this person all along, and he hadn't noticed that was his response. "No," Jeannie stiffened. "Then you've made your decision." Taylor was told to unlock the door mechanism. Malcolm's thoughts whirled. They were going to carry out their plan, eject him from the plane. The absurdity of it all was almost astonishing. After managing to evade detection for so long, they genuinely thought themselves invincible. Taylor headed towards the cockpit, but Malcolm acted quicker. His combat instincts took over. He grabbed Taylor's arm, turned, and forced him into a restraint hold before anyone could react. "Stay still," Malcolm spoke softly. "Everyone, free him," Jeannie shouted. "Emma, come here." Now, Malcolm kept his voice composed, commanding. His daughter hesitated, then broke free from Shelby's grasp and ran to him. He freed Taylor and embraced Emma tightly, moving backward towards the cockpit. "You're making matters worse," Shelby stated, but fear was evident in her gaze now. Malcolm announced the disintegration of their scheme. At the cockpit door, he thumped loudly. "Open up, Ward. Federal emergency," he demanded over the intercom. The pilot responded cautiously, "Sir, I can't do that without Mr. Vance's approval." Unheedful, Malcolm had already memorized the aircraft's emergency override code. He swiftly inputted it into the keypad and the door unlocked. Startled and agitated, Hal Ward turned in his seat. "What's going on?" Malcolm retorted, brandishing Chris's temporary FBI badge. "This flight is under federal investigation. You're going to turn this plane around now." The pilot's eyes widened at the threat. Behind Malcolm, Jeannie's enraged shriek echoed, along with Taylor's menacing threats. But Malcolm had the advantage, time and control. "Do as instructed," he commanded. "Refuse, and you'll be charged as an accomplice to attempted murder." The pilot's hands quivered as he reached for the controls. It was then when Shelby acted. Shelby rushed towards Emma, attempting to take her from Malcolm's grip. However, Malcolm had foreseen this, everything. He evaded her, safeguarding his daughter with his own body. "You can't do this," Shelby protested. "She's my daughter." "Ours," Malcolm retorted. "But I'm rescuing her from you." Emma was now sobbing, petrified and bewildered. Malcolm despised the fact that she had to witness such ugliness. Yet, there seemed no other option. Ward altered the plane's course, as Malcolm reminded him. Now, the pilot glanced towards Taylor, who appeared torn between two powerful figures. Taylor's face was livid with fury. "If you side with him, you're dismissed," Taylor growled. "And I will ensure you never work again. If you defy me, you're an accessory to kidnapping and attempted murder." Malcolm retaliated. "Federal charges. Federal prison. Make your choice carefully." Hal Ward's discipline overcame his loyalty. Malcolm steered the aircraft, then Jeannie unveiled a firearm. Malcolm stiffened as he hadn't expected this predicament. Despite its toy-like appearance in her well-groomed hands, the gun was undeniably real. "You foolish, arrogant man," Jeannie spat venomously. "Did you truly believe you could outwit us? We've been dealing with situations like this for years before your time. We've tackled greater challenges." "Lower the weapon," Malcolm requested calmly. He positioned Emma behind him as a barrier. "She won't shoot you," Taylor asserted, regaining his composure. "She only needs to make you comprehend our seriousness. Hand over Emma and sign the damn papers." The situation was spinning rapidly in Malcolm's mind. The gun drastically altered everything. He couldn't attempt to overpower Jeannie with Emma nearby. He couldn't call her bluff, as he wasn't certain if it was indeed a bluff. These people had already shown they were capable of taking lives. Ponder upon your actions, Taylor, as any success would not save you from the consequences. I've alerted the FBI about your activities. They are aware of your deceit, corruption, and criminal acts. The game is up. You're lying, but your claims about the falsified clinical trials, bribed FDA officials, and concealed deaths are hardly convincing. I have been gathering evidence for 3 years, enough to ensure a lifetime imprisonment for everyone involved. Even if I don't step off this plane, you're doomed. Jeannie's hand quivered slightly, the gun shook. He's bluffing, Taylor said hesitantly, but his voice betrayed him. Examine your phone, Malcolm advised. Check your emails. I sent something this morning. Proof. Taylor retrieved his phone, scrolled, and paled. Malcolm had sent only a list of files, yet it was enough to seal your fate. Taylor clearly observed what Malcolm had stolen. You devil, Taylor murmured softly. I was trained by the best, Malcolm retorted. You all taught me to be merciless, strategic, and to safeguard what's crucial. He clutched Emma closer. And she is more valuable than anything else. A moment of stillness ensued. The plane's engines droned. Behind them, the co-pilot was likely attempting to decipher the situation. Then Jeannie smiled cruelly, a chilling expression. You know what? You're correct. This has spiraled out of control. Let's all just relax and discuss logically. Malcolm didn't trust her an iota, but he nodded cautiously. Wise. Hide your weapon, Anne. Jeannie fired. The noise was intense in the confined area. Malcolm felt a burn on his shoulder where the bullet grazed him. A split-second move, instinctive survival saved him. However, the gunshot had an additional impact. Alarms started blaring. An abrupt decompression warning sounded. From the cockpit, Hal Ward yelled, "You insane woman," referring to Emma, as she had punctured the plane's hull. Oxygen masks deployed from the ceiling, and the aircraft started trembling. Ward struggled with the controls in an attempt to lower the altitude for safer breathing conditions. Amidst the turmoil, Malcolm acted swiftly. He snatched an oxygen mask, fastened it on Emma, and hurried towards the plane's rear where an emergency exit was located. A rapid deployment slide was attached there, a detail Malcolm had memorized from the aircraft schematics. Taylor bellowed, "Halt him," but it was too late. Malcolm was already at the door. He pushed the emergency release button, causing warning signals to flash and alarms to blare throughout the plane. Emma cried through her mask, "Daddy, what are you doing?" To which Malcolm replied, "Have faith in me, dear. I need you to trust me." He held Emma close, shielding her with his body as he prepared to activate the emergency slide. Shelby rushed towards them, her face contorted by rage and dread. "You're mad. You'll murder her. It's better than leaving her with you," Malcolm bellowed. He then made a choice that would both torment him and rescue him. He activated the emergency slide deployment mechanism. The door didn't fully open, given the altitude and pressure difference, but the slide started inflating, filling the aircraft's back section with a yellow rubber escape chute. It was pandemonium, the wind, the noise, the alarms, Emma's screams. Malcolm retrieved a parachute harness from the emergency equipment locker, something he had ensured was there during his research. This device was designed for crew in emergencies like these. He fastened Emma to his torso, securing her with every buckle and strap he could find. "No," Jeannie shrieked, cutting through the chaos. She was brandishing the gun again, attempting to shoot through the confusion. However, Ward had somehow regained control of the plane, causing it to descend rapidly. Equalizing pressure and an extended slide presented itself to Malcolm, offering a precarious, perhaps suicidal escape route. Not intended for such use, it was constructed for ground evacuations. Yet, inflated and accessible, it became his sole hope. "I love you, Emma," he murmured into his daughter's hair before leaping. They weren't plummeting from the plane as they were still too high. Instead, he plunged onto the slide. As they struck the inflated rubber, Malcolm and Emma slid down, the material deforming under their weight. The wind was fierce, tearing at them, trying to tear them apart. But Malcolm clung on. Trained for hostile environments and prepared for situations where failure equaled death, he shielded Emma with every ounce of his might, holding her close as the slide, connected to the plane by a tether system, billowed out behind the aircraft like a strange yellow tail. They glided along its span, the substance searing Malcolm's skin through his coat. "Daddy," Emma's voice was swallowed by the gusts. Malcolm spotted them in the doorway. Taylor, Jeannie, Shelby wide-eyed with terror and disbelief. Jeannie attempted to fire again, but the wind obstructed her aim. The plane persisted in its descent. 15,000 feet, 10,000 feet. The chute extended further, the force immense. And then, at 8,000 feet, the chute's fixing point snapped. They were plummeting. However, they were plummeting ensnared by an inflated emergency chute surrounding them like a bizarre parasitic parachute. The rubber material swelled and caught wind, decelerating their fall. It wasn't a functional parachute. The landing would be harsh, potentially lethal, but it was a gamble. Malcolm perceived the ground hurtling towards him. They were over countryside farmland and forests in rural Connecticut. He steered the chute as well as he could toward a wooded region, hoping the trees could lessen their impact. "Shut your eyes, dear Emma," he bellowed. "Shut your eyes and cling to me." They collided violently with the tree line. Branches splintered and cracked. The airbag burst and collapsed. Malcolm felt his ribs shatter, endured pain erupt throughout his body. Yet he retained his hold on Emma, shielded her from the crash's force. They plummeted through the canopy and landed harshly, knocking the wind out of Malcolm. For a brief instant, everything turned black. Then, gradually, awareness resurfaced. Malcolm lay flat on his back in a forest glade, the shredded remnants of the emergency airbag draped over them like a torn yellow cloth. Every inch of him screamed with pain, but Emma was stirring against his chest, sobbing but conscious. "Daddy, Daddy, wake up." "I'm here, sweetheart," Malcolm murmured weakly. He fumbled with trembling hands to unstrap her, inspecting her for injuries. Bruises? Certainly. Possibly a sprained wrist. But alive. Remarkably, astonishingly alive. They had survived a plunge from an aircraft. 30,000 feet above ground, the genie had issued a threat, yet it seemed survival was improbable given the altitude. Malcolm retrieved his damaged phone and managed to make a call to Chris Wilkinson. "Chris, this is Malcolm. I'm alive. Trace my GPS and alert everyone. The Vance family intended to assassinate me and my daughter. I have everything on record. God help us, Chris. I'm being tracked now. Where are you? Hurry up. And Chris, ensure they don't bring their plane down. Arrest them the instant they touch ground. Every one of them." Malcolm terminated the call and embraced Emma tightly. In the forest, they waited for rescue while the Vance family's private jet journeyed toward its destination, oblivious to the impending doom that awaited them. A grim smile crossed Malcolm's face. He had warned them about going to war. Now they would learn the consequences of taking on a Marine. 6 hours elapsed. Malcolm occupied a Connecticut State Police station, his ribs wrapped and shoulder bandaged, observing via one-way glass as federal agents detained Taylor Vance on the Hartford Brainard Airport tarmac. Emma slumbered in an adjacent room under the vigilant gaze of a victim advocate. Doctors had thoroughly examined her. Mere bruises, no more. The emergency harness Malcolm had fastened around her and his body shielding hers during the fall were credited for saving her life, deemed a miracle. Malcolm viewed it as preparation meeting opportunity. "That was the most preposterous thing I've ever seen," Chris Wilkinson remarked, standing beside Malcolm. The FBI agent appeared to have aged significantly in the past 6 hours. "I hadn't envisaged you literally leaping from a plane when you said you'd give them a means to hang themselves," Malcolm explained. "The slide was designed for that altitude," he added. "In theory, both of us should be deceased," Wilkinson countered. Malcolm confirmed it was technically possible. "However, they aren't," Malcolm observed as federal agents guided Taylor towards a waiting vehicle. The pharmaceutical tycoons appeared purple with fury and astonishment. Now their empire crumbles. Chris extracted a tablet and scrolled through papers. "We've frozen all Vance Industries accounts, confiscated their properties, the evidence you provided. This is immense, Malcolm. We're looking at one of the largest pharmaceutical fraud cases in American history. The fabricated trials, the bribes, the concealed deaths. There are at least 300 fatalities directly linked to Vance Payne that they were aware of and buried. Actually, it's 317, Malcolm murmured. I counted. 317 individuals who used Vance Payne for legitimate pain management only to become addicted or lose their lives. People with names, families, lives, all taken by the Vance's greed. What about Shelby? Malcolm inquired. Chris's countenance became intricate. She claims she was unaware of the fraud. She claimed she was as much a victim as you were, but Malcolm scoffed bitterly. She knew she was on the board of directors and signed off on fraudulent reports. Can you prove it? Yes, he replied, producing his hidden phone, the one he'd kept secret from the Vancesk. It contained all his backup recordings and documents. He had recorded board meetings where she was present, voting in favor of concealing clinical trial issues. Chris scrolled through the files, his expression growing grimmer with each swipe. This is Jesus, Malcolm. You've been recording for 3 years. I learned in the Marines document everything. Assume everyone's lying, trust but verify. Malcolm spoke emotionlessly, drained and exhausted. They had tried to deceive him. He just didn't expect them to attempt to sabotage a plane. About that, Chris opened another file. The cockpit voice recorder captured it all. Taylor's threats, Jeannie pulling the trigger, your entire altercation. We have it on charges of attempted murder, kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, and these are just the beginning as fraud allegations loom. What about Hal Ward? The pilot claims ignorance about the planned actions. States that Taylor instructed him to bypass certain safety measures prior to the flight, but insisted it was for maintenance purposes. He's giving testimonies on other questionable flights, instances where Taylor had him fly to unconventional locations without a flight plan in place. Malcolm has logged these details away. More crimes, more evidence piling up. In real time, the Vance empire was collapsing. There's something else, Chris said cautiously. Jeannie Vance is proposing a deal. Malcolm's gaze sharpened. What kind of deal? A full cooperation offer in exchange for reduced charges. She claims Taylor orchestrated everything, that she was compelled, that she was afraid for her life. She's willing to testify against him. It's all nonsense. She was the one who fired the gun, and she initially proposed my murder. Accident and something clean were her phrases. We have a recording of her saying it as well, Chris affirmed. But she's a wealthy white woman in her 60s with high-priced lawyers. Sometimes juries, no deals. Malcolm's voice was unyielding as steel. Not for her, not for Taylor, not for Shelby. Each of them will pay for their actions. Chris scrutinized him for a long while. You've transformed, Malcolm. You're more ironclad than when we served together. They made me harder. Malcolm winced as his ribs complained. I sacrificed 3 years of my life to watch them cause havoc without retribution. 3 years of being told I wasn't adequate, that I didn't matter, that I was expendable. He faced his old companion. I'm done being disposable. I won't tolerate people like her walking away any longer. A knock interrupted the moment. Another FBI agent stepped in, a woman with sharp features and an efficient demeanor. This was Agent Wilkinson. Shelby Vance's legal representatives had arrived. They sought to discuss Emma Sharp's custody arrangements. Malcolm's blood ran cold. No. Beginning to speak, Chris continued. No. She attempted to take my life. She stood there as her mother fired at me. She held Emma while they threatened to eject us both from an aircraft. Malcolm's voice escalated. She is not entitled to custody, visitation, or anything else. Her only destination should be a prison cell. The female agent seemed uneasy. Mr. Sharp, family court and criminal court are distinct entities. Even if Mrs. Vance faces criminal charges, she might retain parental rights. Then I'll wage relentless litigation until Emma turns 18. Malcolm was now trembling, gripped by adrenaline, rage, and exhaustion. I will exhaust every resource, call in every debt, and present every piece of proof I've amassed. Shelby Vance will stay away from my daughter forever. Chris placed a hand on Malcolm's shoulder. All right, we'll deal with it. But you need to compose yourself. You need rest. You have broken ribs, a concussion, and endured great suffering. I won't rest until they are all in prison. That may take months, Malcolm, even years. But then I will have time. Chris glanced at the female agent and nodded. Very well. We will inform Shelby's lawyers that there will be no discussions about custody. All matters will be resolved through criminal proceedings initially. However, Malcolm, you must consider Emma. She too has experienced trauma. She requires stability, therapy, time to heal. As exhaustion washed over Malcolm, his anger dissipated, leaving him barely able to stand. You're right. You're right. I can't let her go, Chris. She is all that remains of me. You won't lose her. I swear it to you. Chris guided Malcolm back to the chair. Sit down to avoid falling down, as assistance for coffee and food is coming. You need to maintain your energy levels. While Chris attended to Shelby's lawyers, Malcolm was left solitary in the observation room, peering through the glass as additional federal agents managed the crime scene. They immobilized the van's plane, took photographs of the damaged entrance, gathered proof from the cockpit voice recorder. Malcolm's phone vibrated, a text from an unidentified number. You believe you have prevailed. You are mistaken. My family has faced harder trials than you. We will overwhelm you in court. We will take Emma, and you will perish penniless and forlorn. It had to be from Shelby, utilizing a disposable phone. Malcolm scrutinized the message for a prolonged instant, then captured it as a screenshot and transmitted it to Chris. More proof of intimidation, threats, and the van's refusal to acknowledge that their reign of terror has ended. Then he composed a response. I am already deceased. On that plane, when you opted for your parents over our daughter, I perished. The man who cherished you, held faith in you, thought our bond was genuine, he's vanished. What remains is a figure schooled in obliterating adversaries. You, Shelby, are my adversary now, along with all of you. So gather your lawyers, your wealth, every resource you possess. I am prepared for battle. He pressed send, then blocked the number. Malcolm relaxed in his chair, closing his eyes. His body and heart ached, but beneath the pain and fatigue, there was an unyielding resolve. Determination. The Van Cess had erred fundamentally. They believed Malcolm to be weak because he loved them, because he strove to salvage the marriage, because he tolerated their disdain for Emma's sake. But love wasn't weakness. Love was the impetus behind his 3-year pursuit of evidence. Love was why he learned emergency protocols and aircraft systems. Love was why he survived an unlikely plummet and protected his daughter. News outlets nationwide broadcast the sensational story by dawn. CNN screamed, pharmaceutical heir. Ian accused mid-flight murder plot. New York Times boldly declared, unmasking the ruthless Van Cess dynasty. USA Today read, father saves daughter in thrilling plane escape. Malcolm observed the coverage from a clandestine apartment, a safe house provided by the FBI, secure within a protected building where he and Emma could hide while events unfolded. Emma, oblivious to the media uproar, was engaged with toys Chris had given her in the bedroom. You're a hero, Chris declared, standing next to Malcolm as they observed a cable news anchor interview an aviation specialist about their escape survival chances. Your tale is widely publicized. Ex-Marine, self-made entrepreneur, dismantled a corrupt billionaire clan. Social media is abuzz. I'm not a hero, Malcolm retorted. I'm merely a father who refused to perish. However, the public seems to have a different viewpoint. Chris displayed his laptop screen, revealing trending hashtags. Hash justice formacom, hash bring down Thevenses, hash father off your narrative is striking a chord. People are tired of wealthy criminals evading justice. You're becoming an emblem. Malcolm perused the posts. Numerous individuals shared their own struggles with oppressive families, losses due to pharmaceutical companies' greed, and David versus Goliath fights that typically ended in tragedy. Yet, there were other posts as well. Criticisms, doubts, conspiracy theories. Things don't quite fit together. How did he manage to survive that fall? It seems like a publicity stunt. No one is that lucky. He's likely fabricating the entire incident. The Vances are decent people. I worked for them for many years. Malcolm emphasized this point. They're going to try to portray me as the antagonist. They have resources, connections, PR firms. Let them try, Chris said. We have evidence, recordings, tangible proof. The plane's black box alone is enough to convict them multiple times over, and the fraud case is airtight. 317 deaths, Malcolm. The families are already mobilizing, filing wrongful death suits. The Vances will be swamped with lawsuits for the rest of their lives. A knock on the door made them both nervous. Chris checked the security camera feed and then eased up. It's the prosecutor, Linda Buchanan. She's competent, tough as steel, never loses cases. Linda Buchanan was a woman in her 50s with gray hair as strong as steel and sharp, discerning eyes. With a demeanor befitting someone who had spent decades imprisoning criminals, she firmly grasped Malcolm's hand. Mr. Sharp, I've scrutinized your data. It's remarkable, extensive, bordering on compulsive. You utilized those 3 years admirably. She moved to her seat, withdrawing her own tablet. I am personally handling the fraud case. It involves federal charges for conspiracy to defraud the FDA, falsifying clinical trial data, bribing government officials, and about 300 counts of negligent homicide linked to the deaths of Vance Payne. Taylor and Jeannie Vance are expected to spend their lives in prison. Shelby Vance will serve a substantial term as well. Regarding the attempted murder charges, Malcolm inquired. That matter is being addressed by the Connecticut State Attorney's Office. They possess the plane recordings, your testimony, Emma's testimony, and evidence from the aircraft that aims to limit her involvement. It seems to be another solid case. Shelby's legal team plans to contend she was compelled. Chris mentioned that she was afraid of her parents, suggesting she didn't genuinely engage in the assault. Linda gave a chilling smile. If that's true, we have a recording where she laughs and instructs you to fall like rubbish. It seems unlikely one is coerced while actively participating. Malcolm felt a somber triumph. He had secretly recorded the moment when Shelby's facade cracked, exposing her cruelty. This evidence would likely erode any empathy a jury might have for her. What's the schedule? Malcolm inquired. The grand jury meeting for the fraud charges is next week. The trial for attempted murder may take 3 to 6 months. In the interim, be cautious. The Vances still have associates and indebted individuals, workers who don't want to lose their income source. Are you suggesting I'm at risk? Malcolm asserted that affluent individuals facing lengthy prison terms might resort to extreme measures. As a crucial witness in numerous cases, you hold significant importance. He assured you, if something were to befall him, the evidence would surface automatically due to his precautions, multiple copies, various storage locations, and self-destruct mechanisms. Linda and Chris looked at each other in admiration. You indeed have a mind for detail, Linda remarked. I'm merely a paranoid individual, Malcolm retorted. The Marines instilled the habit of preparing for worst-case scenarios in me. The Vances showed me that such situations do occur. Your caution might just save your life. As she rose to depart, Linda advised, I'll reach out soon. In the interim, remain hidden at the secure location. Do not engage with media without prior approval and keep your daughter close by. The Vance's legal team will try every trick in the book to discredit you. They'll delve into your past, searching for anything they can misconstrue or use against you. After she departed, Malcolm sat in quiet contemplation. He'd cognitively understood that dismantling the Vances would be a protracted, taxing ordeal. However, experiencing it firsthand dealing with lawyers, prosecutors, and media scrutiny was overwhelmingly draining. Daddy, Emma timidly entered the room, clutching a bear Chris had given her. Can we return home? Malcolm's heart ached slightly. Home? They no longer possessed one. The Vance estate was a crime scene. His previous residence had been sold long ago. Everything they had constructed was demolished. Not just yet, dear, he whispered softly, but we'll locate a new home, just you and me, somewhere secure and joyful. With her mother absent, the question loomed heavy. Malcolm had been apprehensive about this discussion. Let me explain, my little one, that your mother attempted to harm me, that your grandparents were cruel, that the family we knew was based on lies and dishonesty. Your mother made some poor decisions, he said cautiously. Poor decisions led to hurtful actions, causing her to leave for a while. Did she harm you as well? Yes, indeed. This resonated with Emma, her demeanor thoughtful beyond her years. She cautiously approached Malcolm, mindful of his wounded ribs, and embraced him tenderly. I'm grateful you survived, Daddy, she said. Me too, he replied. They remained in this position for a prolonged time, father and daughter, both survivors of a conflict many could hardly comprehend. The world outside was tuned to their evolving narrative. Inside, they were merely two individuals searching for ways to carry on. Malcolm's phone vibrated. A new message, this time from a familiar number, Morris Livingston, an ex-employee from the security firm. They had maintained sporadic contact since the company's downfall. Malcolm, the text read, I saw the news. I'm deeply sorry about everything. If you require anything, testimony, character reference, or whatever, I stand ready. You were an excellent boss, the best I ever worked for. Malcolm read the text twice, a warmth blooming in his chest. Not everyone had forsaken him when the Van Cess wrecked his business. Some individuals recognized him. Some still trusted him. He responded, Thanks, Morris. I might need your assistance with that, and when this ends, I aim to revive my company. The prompt reply arrived. Absolutely. Inform me when you're prepared. I'll notify the old squad, Malcolm replied, flashing a rare smile in daze. The Van Cess had claimed his business, yet they hadn't taken his standing, his connections, his knack for rebuilding. Before, he started from scratch. He could do it again. But first, he needed to complete what he initiated. He summoned his encrypted documents, those containing all he knew about the Van Cess. The deceit was merely the start. Other crimes and concealed truths had surfaced, including offshore accounts, money laundering, and ties with politicians who turned a blind eye as Van Cess Payne committed murders. Malcolm had amassed a powerful arsenal of proof. He'd planned to hand it over to the authorities. But now, as he watched the media coverage, saw how Van Cess's lawyers were trying to sow doubt and manipulate the narrative, he considered a more tactical approach. Perhaps it was time to meticulously reveal his evidence, maintaining consistent pressure, denying them room to regroup or redefine their story. The Van SSS believed this was a trial, thinking they could use legal maneuvers, money, or influence to escape. Malcolm intended to educate them that not all battles were won in courtrooms. Some wars were won by disabling the opponent's ability to respond, and he would learn from experts how to execute this strategy perfectly. 16 days elapsed before Malcolm found himself in a Connecticut courtroom as a grand jury brought indictments against the entire Vance clan. The allegations were numerous. They encompassed conspiracy, fraud, negligent homicide, attempted murder, and assault with a lethal weapon. The bail hearing stretched over 4 hours. Taylor Vance's legal team contended he was a respected community figure, not a flight risk, deserving of bail. However, the prosecutor, Linda Buchanan, presented the cockpit voice recording where Taylor explicitly threatened to eject Malcolm from the plane. Consequently, bail was denied. Jeannie Vance's attorneys argued she was an elderly individual with no prior criminal record, that her age and health rendered her harmless. Again, Linda played the recording of Jeannie firing at Malcolm, leading to another rejection of bail. Shelby's lawyers faced a more challenging case. Given her status as Emma's mother, they pleaded for bail to enable her to see her daughter and preserve their relationship. They portrayed her as a victim of her parents' dominance, a woman who had been manipulated and controlled throughout her life. Then Linda played the recording, Fall Like the Trash You Are, Shelby's voice filled with venom and mirth. Bail was refused. Malcolm watched as all three Vances were led away in handcuffs, their expensive attire looking odd in the harsh fluorescent light of the courthouse. Taylor continued to bluster, making threats. Jeannie remained silent, her face a mask of anger. Shelby cried, but Malcolm felt nothing watching her tears. Those were the tears of someone caught, not someone remorseful. How do you feel? Chris inquired as they left the courthouse, pushing past a crowd of reporters. I can finally breathe, Malcolm replied. For 3 years, I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now they are the ones waiting. They are the ones confined. However, the conflict was far from over. Far from it. The following month brought fresh difficulties. Malcolm was required to testify before a grand jury regarding the fraud case, explaining his uncovering of manipulated clinical trials, bribes, and concealed deaths. He spent 6 hours answering questions, offering context for thousands of pages of evidence. The media coverage grew more intense. Additional families emerged, those who had lost loved ones due to Vance's pain. Wrongful death lawsuits proliferated. Initially 50 cases, then 100, subsequently 200. The value of the Vance Company's stock plummeted. The corporation was being dismantled, assets seized to cover future settlements. Malcolm observed the empire crumbling, feeling no remorse. 317 people had perished. These families deserved justice. However, the Vances refused to surrender quietly. Their lawyers launched a coordinated attack on Malcolm's character. They alleged he'd manipulated Shelby intentionally, marrying into the family to seize their wealth. They scrutinized his military records, attempting to portray him as unstable, violent, and prone to outbursts fueled by PTSD. They encountered former co-workers ready to claim he was challenging to collaborate with, arrogant, compulsive. Ridiculous, Chris asserted, examining the adversary's submissions. They're aimlessly hurling allegations in hopes something sticks. However, you possess military honors, recognitions, an unblemished track record. Furthermore, the individuals they presented to denounce you. We've uncovered that the Vances bribed them. Of course they did. The Vances have been employing such tactics for years. They intimidate what can't be intimidated, by what can't be intimidated, and eradicate anything unwilling to cooperate. Yet, Malcolm also had allies. Morris Livingston wasn't the sole former employee who spoke up. 12 others contacted us, willing to testify about how the Vances systematically dismantled Malcolm's company. They presented emails, documents, records of meetings where Taylor openly discussed bankrupting Malcolm financially. Unsurprisingly, this was a method the Vances had been using for decades. Morris conveyed to Malcolm during their coffee meeting, distant from Connecticut, that they should have voiced their concerns earlier. They acknowledged knowing about the actions taken against you, yet were fearful due to threats and bribes. Some individuals accepted the money in exchange for silence, but witnessing your resistance, Malcolm, stirred them. It reminded them of the importance of standing up for oneself. Malcolm nodded, expressing no blame towards those who remained silent. He found the Vances intimidating, given their seemingly limitless resources and patience. They'd invest $1 million to ruin someone over a petty $100 dispute, just to send a message. Morris corrected, using past tense, they're done. Their company is crumbling, their assets are seized, and they're headed to prison. You've defeated them, Malcolm, he asserted. However, Malcolm disagreed, stating the trials hadn't begun yet. They could still escape punishment. Morris emphasized, impossible. Not with the evidence you possess, not with the cockpit recordings. He leaned closer. However, there's more you need to be aware of. Some of us have been investigating other ventures of Vance Industries, including their drug development. We uncovered a concerning truth. What exactly? We discovered that Vance Industries had been working on a drug for Alzheimer's, which they named MindGuard. The initial trials indicated promise, but then there were issues. Patients developed seizures and strokes, and at least 15 people lost their lives during the trial. Malcolm paled at this revelation. Why haven't I been informed about this? They concealed it heavily. They paid off families, destroyed records, manipulated the trial data to show the deaths were from natural causes. Once the drug was discredited, they abandoned it and moved on to other projects. Morris continued scrolling through documents. We found the original research notes, emails suggesting a cover-up. This isn't merely negligence like with Vance Payne. This is something far more sinister. Malcolm gazed at the screen, his thoughts whirling. If Morris was correct, the Vances crimes ran much deeper than suspected. It wasn't merely fraud. It was a pattern of murder for financial gain, followed by the elimination of any traces. "May I receive copies?" Malcolm inquired. "Done. Encrypted drive," Morris replied, pushing it towards him. "What do you intend to do with it?" "Hand it over to Linda Buchanan. Pass it on to the FBI. Let them accumulate it." Malcolm pocketed the drive. "The Van Cess will die in prison, Morris. I'll ensure it," he declared. They consumed their coffee in silence, each contemplating the gravity of their discovery. Another 15 victims. Another 15 families seeking justice. As Malcolm drove towards the safe house, his phone rang, an unknown number. He picked up cautiously. "Hello, Mr. Sharp," a woman's voice, shaky, young. "This is Suzanne Shields. As a reporter from the Hartford Courant, I've been investigating the Vance family for 2 years and would like to discuss some information with you. Your radar went up. I can't engage with media without approval from the prosecutor first. I empathize. However, I believe we could mutually benefit. I have details about the Vances that aren't in public records, offenses they committed prior to your joining the family. Crimes concealed. I intend to publish this information, but I need a credible source to go on record. Given your history of successfully challenging them, you are that source. Everyone else who attempted to do so either perished, disappeared, or was ruined. Yet you endured. You're still here, and the public trusts you. Considering the evidence, you possess 317 Vance pain victims, 15 Mindguard victims, and the possibility of further victims. I'm referring to crimes and murders concealed so deeply that nobody even suspected their existence. I think you might find this information valuable." He inquired about the type of information. "I'll demonstrate it in person, but you must meet me at the Middletown Public Library tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone, and don't inform anyone, as the Vance Cess Group has previously threatened me. I need to exercise caution." After a pause, he confided that his intuition suggested this was a trap, but her voice, fearful yet authentic, compelled him to trust her. "I'll attend," he replied, adding, "If it turns out to be a setup, it isn't. I guarantee it." She terminated the call before he could say more. After contemplation, he phoned Chris. "I require assistance. A journalist alleges to possess incriminating evidence about Vance S. I want a backup, yet at a distance someone observing to ensure it's not an ambush." Chris cautioned him. "You should refrain from attending." "Chris, how many other affected families are there? How many other unacknowledged victims might there be?" A pause over the line. "I'll have agents nearby, discreetly positioned, dressed casually, at a distance. You'll wear a wire. Any hint of trouble, we intervene." "Thanks, Malcolm. Be cautious. The Vance family has nothing more to lose, making them potentially more dangerous, not less." Malcolm pondered Taylor's enraged and desperate courtroom expression, Jeannie's calculated coldness, and Shelby's insincere tears. "I understand," he said, "but they've made me just as dangerous." He ended the call and drove back to the secure house, where Emma was there with her toys and innocence. She was gradually recovering with the assistance of a trauma-specializing child psychologist. She asked about her mother less frequently now, never mentioned her grandparents. Malcolm read her a bedtime story, put her to sleep, gave her a goodnight kiss on the forehead. "I love you, dear." "Love you too, Daddy." Malcolm observed his daughter sleeping, then departed to unveil Morris's encrypted drive. Inside were MindGuard files containing clinical trial data, death reports, emails detailing the concealment of deaths, patient names, dates, locations, all pointing to a systematic disregard for human life in pursuit of profit. Deeper still, he found details about additional projects and drugs. As he delved further, his fury escalated. The Vances Corporation hadn't merely been negligent. They had systematically sacrificed lives for their profit. Their crimes were countless, repeated over decades. By sunrise, Malcolm resolved a course of action. It wasn't enough to imprison the Vances. He aimed to expose every crime in their legacy, remember every victim, and seize their wealth to compensate the families they had destroyed. The Vances had taught him ruthlessness. Now it was time to use it against them. 2 p.m. at Middletown Public Library found it bustling with college students studying, retirees browsing, and children in story time. Malcolm scanned the reading room and quickly spotted Suzanne Shields. She was in her early 30s, sporting a sleek hairstyle, jeans, and a college sweatshirt. Recognizing him, relief crossed her face as he approached. "Mr. Sharp, thank you for coming." She held her laptop bag tightly, as if it contained something precious. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." Seated opposite her, Malcolm felt the wire hidden under his shirt, a reminder of the FBI agents Chris had stationed around the library. "Let's dispense with formalities. What do you have?" Suzanne opened her laptop, shielding it from security cameras. "3 years ago, I was tasked to write a piece praising Vance Industries' charitable donations. It was the usual rich family gives back story. While investigating, I discovered inconsistencies. Funds designated for hospitals and schools allegedly remained unspent. Listed grants that supposedly never dispersed. Embezzlement, but worse. She opened a spreadsheet revealing funds going to shell corporations owned by the Vances. These corporations then paid bribes to politicians, FDA officials, medical boards. It was a camouflaged money laundering scheme masquerading as charity. They'd publicly donate, receive tax breaks and positive publicity only to channel the funds back into their corruption network. Malcolm scrutinized the figures. Millions of dollars flowing through fictitious charities, eventually ending up with those supposed to oversee Vance Industries. It was a sinister, clever scheme, something that could take years to unravel if anyone cared to investigate it. Suzanne added, "I attempted to publish this 2 years ago, but my editor shelved the story. He claimed the Vances threatened to bankrupt the newspaper if we ran it. Later, I started being trailed. My residence was broken into, but nothing stolen, just rearranged. Messages left behind. I grew fearful and withdrew. Now, why speak up? Because you've shown they aren't invincible. You've demonstrated that they can be challenged." Her voice quivered slightly. "And because I discovered something else. Something that made me realize I couldn't stay quiet any longer." She opened another file. Malcolm leaned in, reading, and his blood ran cold. Jesus Christ. The document was a coroner's report from 15 years ago. Carl Stark, aged 47, died of a heart attack while testifying before Congress about pharmaceutical industry practices. The report indicated natural causes, but attached to it was another document, a previously lost toxicology report that had only recently resurfaced. Carl Stark had been poisoned with a substance that mimicked a heart attack. The levels in his blood were astronomical, far beyond what could happen naturally. Carl Stark was intending to reveal Vance Industries' corrupt activities to Congress, Suzanne clarified. His testimony would have initiated federal probes and potentially criminal accusations against Taylor Vance. However, he passed away mysteriously just before he could testify, leading everyone to believe it was due to stress. In reality, it was murder. This information originated from a confidential informant in the medical examiner's office who had been silent for 15 years out of fear. But seeing your resilience and bravery, others are starting to speak up, Mr. Sharp. It seems people are finally ready to disclose. Malcolm scrutinized the data before him. It wasn't merely fraud or negligence, but cold-blooded murder. The Vances had eliminated a witness to safeguard themselves. Suzanne then whispered softly, "There's more." She unveiled a list of names, 7 other individuals who had sudden, unexplained deaths while examining or opposing Vance Industries, all categorized as natural causes or accidents. Yet, the coincidental timing is too striking. 7 individuals died at crucial junctures before testifying, releasing damaging reports, trials, or possibly even being murdered. The Vance's empire appears to be the potential motive. "Can you definitively prove they were murdered?" Malcolm inquired. "While I can't provide conclusive evidence, the circumstantial proof is compelling and strengthened by Carl Stark's toxicology report. This raises reasonable doubt about their deaths being natural." Closing her laptop, she said, "I'm publishing this story, Mr. Sharp, whether you choose to participate or not. But I thought it best to share the information with you first. Your case against them could benefit from it." Malcolm nodded slowly. "I require copies of all related materials. They are ready for transfer." She provided a USB drive containing encrypted data. The password is your daughter's birthday, a detail she believed you'd recall. How did she know about your daughter's birthday? Suzanne gave a sad smile. I've been studying your family extensively for a year, Mr. Sharp. I have amassed a considerable amount of information on you. You acknowledged that despite how the Vances mistreated you, you were still a good father. You constructed a business from scratch, only for them to deliberately destroy it. I understand you are the sole virtuous individual within that toxic family. She took a pause. Besides, she knew your actions were calculated, recording everything for years. Some see it as manipulative, others as smart. A few might call it excessive. However, those who have experienced an unescapable nightmare understand. Suzanne prepared to depart. Her story would be published the next day, causing uproar. The Vance's lawyers would likely retaliate, perhaps even against you, but she was no longer afraid of them. If you could endure being ejected from a plane, she could withstand a lawsuit. She vanished into the library stacks as if a spirit, leaving Malcolm alone with the USB drive, contemplating the revelation. 7 suspected murders, numerous drug-related deaths, and countless ruined lives. The Vances were not merely criminals. Malcolm considered them monsters. Exiting the library and acknowledging FBI agents at a distance, he returned to the secure residence, but opted to remain in the car instead. He dialed Linda Buchanan's number and spoke when she answered. I possess new proof, he said. Multiple murders, tampering with witnesses through murder, a toxicology report verifying Carl Stark was poisoned. Silence on her end. Then send me everything. I will examine it tonight. If it is authentic, the entire case will be transformed. We're no longer just discussing fraud and attempted murder. We're discussing capital charges. Connecticut does not enforce the death penalty, but federal murder charges do. If the Vances murdered Carl Stark to stop his congressional testimony, that's federal witness tampering resulting in death. That carries a minimum sentence of life without parole, with the possibility of a death sentence. Linda's tone was firm. Send me the evidence, Malcolm. Let me handle it. Malcolm forwarded the encrypted files, then sat in the darkness, contemplating. 3 years ago, he wed into what he believed was a prosperous, if frosty, family. He assumed their worst traits were snobbishness and cruelty. Unbeknownst to him, he was joining a criminal family that would make the mafia envious. His phone vibrated. A text from Chris, checking up on him. Had he been sitting in his car for 20 minutes? He replied, simply pondering. All's good. Entering now. However, he wasn't all right. He was comprehending that no matter the evidence he amassed, no matter the crimes he unveiled, he'd never fathom the full extent of the Vance's depravity. There would always be more victims, more crimes, more buried corpses in their past. Consequently, he couldn't halt his crusade. Couldn't relax. Not until every secret was disclosed and each crime was avenged. He ultimately stepped inside, ensured Emma was asleep peacefully, gratefully, and sat down at his computer. The encrypted files Suzanne had provided were vast. Decades of investigations. Numerous questionable deaths hinted at the Vances murdering individuals who posed threats for over 2 decades. He began duplicating files, arranging them, preparing to submit them to every applicable authority. This included the FBI, state police, congressional oversight committees, and pharmaceutical regulatory boards. The Vances had constructed their empire on corpses, and Malcolm was determined to expose it. At midnight, his phone rang again with an unknown number. Cautiously, he answered. Hello, you bastard. It was Taylor Vance's voice from prison, utilizing inmate phones. Do you think you've triumphed? Do you believe destroying my company signifies anything? Taylor scornfully remarked. You're fitting into that jumpsuit quite well. Screw you, Malcolm. You were insignificant when Shelby met you. Just a lowly employee with inflated ambitions. We made you. We allowed you access to our world. And you betrayed us. You attempted to push me from the plane. You deserved it. Taylor's voice escalated, losing composure. You were never worthy of my daughter or this family. You should have accepted the agreement, taken the compensation, and vanished like an obedient peasant. Instead, I collected proof of your misdeeds and had you imprisoned. Yes, I have a peculiar sense of humor. Do you believe the evidence holds weight? Do you think I will not walk free? I possess the top-tier legal representation money can buy. I own judges. I possess a toxicology report revealing your poisoning of Carl Stark 15 years ago. Malcolm interjected. I possess evidence of 7 other suspicious deaths. I possess your money laundering operation through phony charities. I possess MindGuard and the 15 individuals who perished due to your cover-up. And I have recordings of you threatening to kill me. Taylor, you will never see the light of day outside prison. You will die there, forgotten and reviled. And I will ensure Emma can't even recall your name. Silence. Then you cannot deprive me of my granddaughter. I have rights. You possess nothing. As a criminal convicted on multiple murder charges, you'll never meet Emma again. She's secure from your grasp. Malcolm ended the call before Taylor could react. Let the old man fume in his cell. Let him comprehend, bit by bit, that his empire was destroyed, that his power was shattered, that Malcolm Sharp had defeated him utterly. The following morning, Suzanne Shields' article was published. The Vance Body Count. How a Pharmaceutical Empire Was Constructed on Murder, declared the headline. The Hartford Courant featured it prominently. By noon, it was picked up by the Associated Press. By evening, it became national news. Malcolm observed the coverage with somber fulfillment. All major media outlets were now reporting not just the Vance Payne fraud, but also the potential murders, the questionable deaths, and a pattern of eliminating threats spanning decades. Public sentiment, which was already unfavorable towards the Vances, turned into raw animosity. Demonstrators congregated outside the courthouse. The trial. After months, Malcolm Sharp occupied the front row of a federal courtroom, witnessing the trial initiation of Taylor and Jeannie Vance. Shelby's trial was to follow as her lawyers succeeded in separating her case, anticipating that public fury would subside before she confronted a jury. The courtroom bustled with journalists, family members of victims, law students, and spectators. Federal marshals patrolled the walls, ensuring order. Taylor and Jeannie Vance remained at the defense table, surrounded by their pricey legal team. Their appearances had changed over the months since their arrest. Taylor's face was haggard, his hair now completely white. Jeannie's immaculate exterior gave way, revealing her hidden wrath. Linda Buchanan prepared to deliver her opening speech. She was impressive, authoritative, meticulous, destructive. To the esteemed members of the jury, over the forthcoming weeks, you will be presented with a tale of greed, corruption, and homicide on an unprecedented scale, bound to leave you astounded. The accused, Taylor and Jeannie Vance, were not simply pharmaceutical executives who erred. They were masterminds of a criminal plot that claimed over 300 lives and wrecked countless others. Buchanan guided the jury through the evidence, detailing the fabricated clinical trials, the bribed authorities, the concealed fatalities. Subsequently, she addressed the attempted murder charges. On March 15th this year, Malcolm Sharp and his 4-year-old daughter Emma were on board the Vance family's private jet. The defendants, accompanied by their daughter Shelby Vance, attempted to assassinate Mr. Sharp by forcing him off the aircraft at an altitude of 30,000 feet. They succeeded only because Mr. Sharp survived. A former Marine named Sharp utilized his military training and swift decision-making to rescue himself and his child using emergency gear. We possess cockpit voice recordings detailing these events, physical proof from the aircraft, and the eyewitness account of the pilot who observed everything. The courtroom hushed as Linda played the cockpit recording, filling the room with Taylor's voice. Sign those documents or you're going to experience an unfortunate accident. Then came Jeannie's voice. Nobody will find you at 30,000 feet. Lastly, Shelby's laughter. Plummet like the garbage you are. Multiple jurors appeared visibly unwell. One woman wept. The defense attorneys endeavored to regain composure in their opening statement, portraying Malcolm as a manipulative profiteer who charmed Shelby for her wealth, then turned against the family when he didn't receive what he desired. They asserted that the plain incident was a misinterpretation, that Malcolm had excessively reacted to a business conversation and endangered his own child. The argument disintegrated when Linda summoned Hal Ward, the pilot, as her first witness. Ward spoke for 3 hours, recounting odd instructions given by Taylor before the flight, directives to disable specific safety measures, and observing the altercation in the cabin. His voice trembled as he detailed hearing a gunshot, alarms, and Malcolm's frantic escape. "Did you think Mr. Sharp and his daughter were in danger?" Linda inquired. "Yes, ma'am. Indeed. I have flown for the Vances for 15 years. I've witnessed their coldness, their cruelty. But on that day, I saw them attempt murder." The defense attempted to discredit him during cross-examination, implying he was testifying against his previous employers for immunity or money. However, Ward remained resolute. "I am testifying because it is the right thing to do. I should have spoken up years ago about what I saw, about what I knew was wrong. But I was afraid. I was a coward." Daily, the prosecution methodically constructed their argument. Previous employees of Vance Industries testified regarding fraudulent activities, being instructed to alter data, and knowledge of deaths, yet ordered to remain silent. Family members of victims appeared, recounting loved ones addicted to Vance painkillers, who succumbed to overdoses or complications. Malcolm testified on the 12th day. For 6 hours, he meticulously guided the jury through his 3-year investigation. He presented documents, played recordings, and detailed each discovery in the puzzle. Defense attorneys attempted to unsettle him, asserting that his evidence was fabricated, that he had plotted against the Vance family from the start. "Is it not true, Mr. Sharp, that you married Shelby Vance solely for access to her family's fortune?" "No," Malcolm replied coolly. "I married Shelby because I loved her, or who I believed she was." When the initial approach failed, you opted to expose their wrongdoings and safeguard your daughter instead. If the Vance family disintegrated as a result, they were responsible for their own downfall. Convenient. Is it convenient that 317 lives were lost due to Vance's actions? Is it convenient that the Vances tried to sabotage me on a plane? Is it convenient that we have evidence of all these incidents? Your voice remained composed, but there was iron beneath it. "I didn't obliterate the Vance family. They annihilated themselves. I merely ensured their actions were public knowledge." The defense had no rebuttal to that. The trial stretched over 7 weeks. The jury pondered for 2 days before returning. Upon their return, the verdict was consistent: guilty on all charges. Taylor Vance displayed no emotion as the verdict was announced, but his hand shook. Jeannie Vance's countenance contorted with fury and disbelief. In the audience, families of victims breathed sighs of relief. Malcolm remained unmoved, feeling a burden he had carried for years finally dissipate. The ordeal was not concluded yet, as Shelby was still awaiting trial and there would be appeals. The protracted civil suits were another matter altogether. However, this pivotal moment served as a crucial triumph, the foundation for future successes. A jury of common folks had judged the Vances guilty, having listened to the evidence and declared, "This is unjust. This is criminal. This requires retribution." At sentencing 3 weeks hence, Taylor Vance was handed 247 years in a federal penitentiary. Jeannie Vance received 189 years. Their fate was set, with no hope of parole. They would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. As marshals escorted them away, Taylor cast one final glare at Malcolm, his countenance exuding sheer loathing. Malcolm remained unfazed, for he had emerged victorious. Outside the courtroom, a horde of reporters surrounded Malcolm. He had ready a statement, refined it with Linda Buchanan to ensure all necessary points were addressed. "I wish to express my gratitude to the jury for their dedication and bravery. I also want to thank the prosecutors, the FBI, the police, and everyone who contributed to this quest for justice. Above all, I wish to honor the victims, the 317 individuals perished due to Vance pain, the 15 who lost their lives during Guard trials, and countless others whose lives were devastated by the Vance family's avarice." Malcolm paused, collecting his thoughts. "I undertook this not for vengeance, but for my daughter, so she could mature in a world where the mighty can't annihilate innocence without retribution. I did it because someone had to speak up, to proclaim enough. No more casualties, no more deceit, no more corruption today, justice prevailed." Today, the victims were heard. And today, I can at last assure my daughter that those who sought to harm us will never harm again. He departed without responding to queries, with Chris Wilkinson leading the way through the throng. Emma was at the safe house with her nanny, and Malcolm yearned to see her, to embrace her, to remind himself why I had fought so fiercely. That night, Malcolm and Emma enjoyed pizza and a Disney film in their compact flat. Emma might not have fully grasped recent events, but she comprehended enough. They were now secure. The unsettling individuals had vanished. During a tranquil scene in the movie, Emma queried, "Daddy," followed by, "Can we adopt a dog?" Malcolm chuckled heartily, his genuine, unrestrained laughter echoing for months. "Of course, dear. We can get a dog. Anything you desire. I want a large dog. For protection. Yet, we no longer require protection, sweetheart. But we can still secure a big dog and a house. With a yard. A home with an outdoor space." Emma returned her smile, contented, and resumed watching the movie. Malcolm observed her, sensing serenity envelop him. Although the ordeal wasn't entirely over, Shelby's case was still under investigation. However, Malcolm had accomplished his mission. He safeguarded his daughter. He revealed the truth. He toppled an empire built on death and deceit. His phone vibrated. 12 former colleagues from the old firm express readiness for reconstruction whenever you're prepared, Malcolm. We have faith in your abilities. Let us demonstrate to those adversaries what you can truly achieve when they're not impeding you. Upon receiving this message, Malcolm replied, "Allow me 6 months to ensure Emma is settled." Then we proceed anew, making improvements over the past. He had undergone transformation, having been dismantled, remade, and tempered in fire. The man who wed Shelby Vance 3 years prior no longer existed, dissolved amidst the same flames that engulfed the Vance empire. Yet from those ashes emerged a stronger entity, a protective father, an unyielding warrior, a man who discovered that sometimes defeating monsters requires transforming into someone they cannot destroy. Malcolm Sharp had waged war against billionaires and emerged victorious. Now he was prepared to demonstrate his constructive prowess amidst tranquility. Ninth chapter. Emergence from the embers. 6 months after the Vance verdicts, Malcolm found himself in Sharp Security Solutions lobby, savoring the aroma of fresh carpets and newly painted walls. The building was humble compared to his previous workspace, a remnant of the Vance's devastation on his first venture. But it was his, purchased with prudently concealed funds during years as a captive in the Vance estate. Morris Livingston appeared beside him, tablet displaying work schedules. "Decent boss," he said. 15 returning crew members and 3 new hires join us on Monday, all eager to restart. Malcolm nodded, experiencing a sense of resolution within his chest. Not exactly tranquility, anger and trauma persisted for true peace. But purpose, direction? Yes, a future detached from the Vances. How's the contract pipeline? Robust, very robust. Seems taking down a corrupt pharmaceutical empire boosted one's business reputation. There's high demand for the security consultant notorious for uncovering corporate fraud. We have 6 primary clients ready, with 3 more in negotiations. At this pace, we'll become profitable within a year. A subtle smile graced Malcolm's face. He had rebuilt before, but this time felt distinct. Now he was aware of the traps, knew whom to rely on and whom to steer clear of, understood how to safeguard what he was constructing. Yet, there was something else bothering him. Malcolm questioned softly. Morris's countenance turned solemn. "The foundation has been established. Sharp Justice Foundation, with 501c3 status approved. We've got initial funds from the settlement." That was the additional news. After the liquidation of Vance Industries' assets, Malcolm had been designated the lead plaintiff in the civil suit for victims of Vance pain. The settlement had been substantial, distributing $0.7 billion among the families. Malcolm received $50 million for the attempted murder and the destruction of his company. $40 million will be donated by him to the Sharp Justice Foundation, which offers legal aid to individuals unable to combat corporate corruption. As Malcolm elucidated to Morris, This foundation will grant free lawyers, investigators, resources, and everything he accrued for himself during his struggle against corruption to others. Morris admired, "That's quite something, Malcolm. It's what should have been around before. Perhaps if it had, the Vances could have been halted years ago." Malcolm diverted his gaze from the window. "How is Emma?" Morris responded. "She's joyful. I met her yesterday. She remains eager for starting kindergarten in the fall." After shifting residences, Malcolm and Emma had settled into a tranquil house in a suburban area 40 minutes from Hartford. It featured a yard, a treehouse, and ample space for their German Shepherd puppy named Thunder. They've spent the past 6 months recovering together with therapy sessions for both of them, establishing routines, constructing a life untouched by the Vances. Emma is flourishing. The nightmares have subsided. She effortlessly smiled and frequently laughed, forming bonds with local children. Scarcely did she refer to her mother or inquire about her grandparents. A news alert vibrated on Malcolm's phone. Shelby Vance's trial commences today. Yes, he had nearly forgotten. He was too engrossed in constructing his new life to keep up with the final chapter of the Vance tale. The trial of Shelby Vance, delayed numerous times, finally began today, her lawyers attempting every imaginable tactic. Yet, she now stood before a jury for her part in the attempted murder, the Frog conspiracy, and concealing the deaths of Vance Payne. "Will you watch?" Morris inquired. "No." Malcolm slipped his phone into his pocket. "I testified before the grand jury, gave my deposition. That's enough. I don't need to witness her conviction to know it's imminent." The prosecutors appeared assured. "They have the recordings, they have the evidence." Shelby made her decisions. She prioritized her family's wealth over everything else. Now she faces the consequences. Malcolm was resolute in his statement. Malcolm experienced no emotion as Shelby faced justice. Neither satisfaction nor anger stirred within him. She was insignificant now, merely a closed chapter. His phone rang, displaying Chris Wilkinson's number. Upon answering, he heard Chris say, "Chris, I have some information. Shelby's lawyers have filed a motion to let her see Emma during the trial, citing maternal rights and claiming a child needs its mother. The usual nonsense." Malcolm clenched his jaw. No, it won't be granted. He had already denied 3 similar motions. "But I thought you should know they're still trying. Emma is healing under Chris's care. She is content. She doesn't need Shelby's toxic influence in her life." Malcolm took a deep breath, suppressing his anger. "Inform the judge that I will take this case to the Supreme Court if required. Shelby lost her parental rights when she attempted to harm Emma's father. Case closed. I will convey this message." However, Chris, realistically, they are merely throwing spaghetti at the wall. They know they will lose the criminal case. They're attempting to elicit sympathy, depicting Shelby as a devoted mother torn from her child. However, she is not a loving mother. She is a criminal who prioritized greed over her daughter. Yes, the jury will discern this as well. Chris paused before inquiring, "How are you?" "Absolutely fine," Malcolm replied, considering Emma waiting at home and the future he was constructing. "I'm doing better than I have in years. The Vances tried to demolish me, but instead I am stronger now. My company has been restored and improved. Emma is secure and content, while they languish in prison where they belong. You deserve all of this, Malcolm." After the call, Malcolm spent the rest of the day dealing with contracts, examining security plans, and expanding his business. He excelled at it, consistently did. The Vances had momentarily taken it from him, but they hadn't destroyed his expertise or his standing. If anything, they'd increased his notoriety. The man who took down Vances carried an air of significance. At 6 o'clock, Malcolm arrived home. Emma rushed out the front door as he parked, Thunder the German Shepherd running alongside her. "Daddy, Daddy," Thunder displayed a new trick. The evening found Malcolm observing his daughter teaching her dog, assisting with homework, preparing dinner. Ordinary, household, tranquil activities that he previously took for granted now held immense value. He cherished each passing moment. Once Emma was asleep, Malcolm settled on the back porch with a beer, watching fireflies flicker throughout the yard. His phone displayed news updates regarding Shelby's trial. The opening statements were said to be dramatic. The prosecution replayed the cockpit recordings once more. Shelby wept on camera, alleging duress. Malcolm didn't give her claim a moment's credence. Neither would the jury. 3 weeks passed before the verdict was announced. Shelby Vance, found guilty across all charges. The sentencing was scheduled for another month. Each morning, Malcolm perused the news over his coffee, experiencing a brief sense of contentment before proceeding with his day. His schedule included a significant client meeting, Emma's school play later in the evening, and a dinner outing with Morris and some longtime acquaintances. The Vances no longer held much significance for him. They were merely ex-criminals he helped convict, serving as mere warnings now. Despite this, Malcolm made it a point to attend Shelby's sentencing hearing. It wasn't about closure. He had already found that. He wanted her to see him his success, his health, his prosperity. In his pocket, he carried a picture of Emma, a constant reminder of what he had safeguarded. Accompanied by an orange jumpsuit and a severe hairstyle, Shelby entered the courtroom. Her appearance was drastically altered, with weight loss and signs of fatigue. Her eyes locked onto Malcolm instantly. He met her gaze without any trace of anger or victory. Instead, he displayed nothing. She meant nothing to him now. 47 years in a federal prison is what the judge imposed on her, making her 75 upon release, if she ever is. Emma would be mature by then, having escaped Shelby's sway. She might recall Malcolm as her father, a guardian, whereas Shelby would become an uninvited, dismal recollection. As the marshals escorted Shelby away, she attempted to address Malcolm. "Please, just let me see Emma once." To which Malcolm responded bluntly, "No." Subsequently, he exited the courtroom without a backward glance. Outside, journalists thronged him. Malcolm had prearranged another statement. "Today's sentencing concludes a chapter from one of the most dismal periods in my life." Shelby Vance, like her ancestors, made decisions that wrecked lives. She opted for greed over family, harshness over empathy, corruption over honesty. Now she will experience the repercussions of those choices. As for me and my daughter, we're proceeding forward. They're constructing a new life, a virtuous life, brimming with love, optimism, and honesty. The Vances attempted to undermine us, but instead, they brought about their own downfall. That's the genuine lesson here. Wickedness doesn't prevail. It may flourish temporarily, but in the end, it crumbles. And when it does, those it sought to harm rise from the ashes, more robust than ever before. Malcolm declined questions and departed, climbed into his car, and drove to Emma's school to pick her up. "Daddy," she rushed towards him, backpack swaying. "I made art today." "Look." She displayed a painting, depicting stick figures of herself, Malcolm, and Thunder standing in front of a house under a massive sun. "It's lovely, my dear. I'm going to hang it on the wall at home. Our home, our home. Not the Vance Manor, not a shelter, not a temporary abode. Their home, the one they chose together, filled with affection instead of malice." Malcolm guided them to get ice cream, followed by a visit to the park where Emma played while Thunder pursued squirrels. That night, once Emma was asleep, Malcolm sat at his desk and penned a missive. It wasn't addressed to the Vances. They deserved nothing from him. Instead, it was meant for the families of the Vance pain victims, the mine guards who had suffered because of the Vances' greed. "I apologize," he wrote. "I'm sorry I didn't uncover their wrongdoings sooner. I'm sorry for marrying into that family and lending them legitimacy. I'm sorry for every day I remained silent as people perished. I can't restore your loved ones. I can't reverse the harm. But I pledge this to you. The Sharp Justice Foundation will work tirelessly to ensure such events never occur again. We will aid individuals in exposing corporate misconduct. We will provide a platform for the voiceless. We will ensure the next Malcolm Sharp does not have to fight alone for 3 years before receiving justice. Your loved ones did not die in vain. Their deaths exposed an evil that had been concealed for decades, and that evil has been vanquished." Malcolm affixed the letter. Tomorrow, he would dispatch copies to every household and settled into a semblance of tranquility. The conflict had ended. he emerged victorious, not solely by imprisoning the Vances, but by resisting their attempts to crush him, safeguarding Emma, reconstructing what they had demolished, transforming hardship into ambition. Malcolm Sharp fought against billionaires and triumphed. However, what mattered more was that he realized triumph wasn't about retribution. It was about endurance, recovery, and creating something superior from the debris. He demonstrated to Emma that monsters could be vanquished, and he showed himself that occasionally the most effective revenge was thriving. The Vances would spend their remaining years in prison, shunned and scorned. Meanwhile, Malcolm would spend his life ahead as a free man, prosperous and cherished. In the long run, this was the ultimate triumph. Epilogue 5 years on, Malcolm found himself in a congressional hearing room, testifying before the Senate Subcommittee on Pharmaceutical Oversight. 9-year-old Emma sat alongside Chris Wilkinson in the gallery, witnessing her father with a sense of pride. Mr. Sharp, the chairperson of the committee, remarked, recognizing the significant impact your foundation has made. Over the past 5 years, it has uncovered 17 substantial cases of pharmaceutical fraud, recovered billions for victims, and imprisoned many corrupt executives. What fuels your commitment? Pondering for a moment, Malcolm responded candidly, I recall what it was like to feel powerless, to sense something was amiss, yet lack the means to retaliate. I remember being told that I was insignificant, that my existence didn't matter, and that powerful individuals could trample me without repercussions. He paused before continuing. The Sharp Justice Foundation is established so no one else has to feel this way. It serves as a refuge for those who discover corruption. In some instances, David triumphs over Goliath thanks to it. The committee members gave their approval, and one senator voiced her thoughts. Are we contemplating legislation offering federal funds for organizations similar to yours to combat corporate fraud? Would the Sharp Justice Foundation be open to such funding? Definitely. Each donation we receive is channeled towards assisting those who lack the means to fight their own battles. Malcolm gave a faint smile. The Vances taught me that money holds power. I'm ensuring this power serves a noble purpose instead of a malicious one. Following the hearing, Malcolm and Emma strolled through the Capitol building with Thunder, now a therapy dog, by their side on his leash. Did you truly vanquish villains, Daddy? Emma inquired. She was aware that her father played a crucial role in helping many people. I supported good people in overcoming evil, Malcolm clarified. Every success is a team effort. When I grow up, I wish to aid others as well. Malcolm looked at his daughter, displaying strength, intelligence, and kindness despite her hardships. That evening, Malcolm's phone rang, an unfamiliar number. He almost let it go, but something compelled him to answer. Hello, he said. Roland Neff, a trembling old voice, responded. Yes, my daughter. She died 3 years ago due to the drug called Neuroboost. They assured us it was safe, but it took her life. They concealed it. I tried to battle them on my own, but I couldn't. Roland's voice cracked. Then I saw your work about Vancist, about how you fought them, and I thought, perhaps, maybe you could assist. Malcolm empathized with Roland Neff, a father whose daughter had met the same unfortunate fate as so many others at the hands of Vancist. Mr. Neff, he said softly, I'll connect you with the Sharp Justice Foundation tomorrow. We're going to look into this matter. If Neuroboost took your daughter's life due to corporate negligence or fraud, we're going to reveal it. The old man murmured, We'll make them pay. He repeated, Thank you. Following the call, Malcolm sat motionless in the shadows for a moment. Then his lips curled into a grim smile. The conflict with the Vancist had concluded, yet the larger battle against corruption, avarice, and those who believed themselves untouchable by law would persist. Malcolm Sharp had mastered combat in this realm, vowing to ensure no one ever fought alone again. The Vancist attempted to annihilate him. Instead, they inadvertently fostered their worst fear. Someone versed in their strategies, hardened by their cruelty, equipped and resolved to halt others like them. True retribution wasn't obliterating adversaries. It was forging a person who ensured they could no longer inflict harm. Malcolm Sharp had accomplished this feat, and the journey had only just begun. Here concludes our tale. Leave your thoughts below. Thank you for your time. Should you find this tale appealing, kindly consider subscribing to our channel. Press the displayed video for our forthcoming rendezvous.